Welcome back to Invest Global. After my initial coverage of the Pulse Chain airdrop, I figured I'd do a part two after all the feedback saying, hey, do a part two. So in today's video, we'll be discussing the updates on what has been going on. As I talked about, those first initial 5 days, that rate was exact. Now, every single day, the rate will be increasing 5%. I think it's incredible game theory they have built in with this airdrop. Absolutely incredible. You see all these projects in the past that have gained so much mass adoption by using airdrops. People love free things, and I love what Pulse Chain is doing here. Essentially, just to recap what I talked about in that original video, which will be linked down below in the description, along with all the other official links to what we talked about today, because there is a lot of scammers out there in the crypto space that try to go, hey, this, for example, this decentralized application sites, people have probably made exact copies of it where one little thing looks different, right? So instead of like an E, they have an O, or like, they change a tiny thing, and then if you're just searching Pulse Chain, it'll pop up maybe as an ad. These things are abundant in the crypto space, so make sure you know what you're doing and you're going to the exact sites. That's why I have them linked down below in the description, along with all the other things from the code. But the point here is, like I was saying, we'll talk about all these things in today's video, but if we scroll down here to the actual sacrifice timeline. So this is the interesting game theory they have built in. So the early adopters that got in here, it was basically per sacrifice point. So per $1 equaled 10,000 sacrifice points. Now, as this occurs every single day moving forward, I think it's for the next, the next 14 days, or at this point, actually 13 days, it'll be increasing, because I'm recording this one day early. It'll be increasing by 5% consistently. So the people who are like waiting on the sidelines, they're going, what if this is a rug pull? What's going on exactly here? This is why they have this built in, right? So this is kind of that game theory they have built in. I find it very, very interesting. Personally, I have participated in this sacrifice phase. I think it's very interesting to use blockchain as free speech, as they talk about in this disclaimer, which I highly recommend you read through. We talked about that in the last review video. But the whole point here is essentially they're innovating on Ethereum. They're basically identifying, hey, when Ethereum hit its peak, when everything was at those peaks, everybody was buying, everybody was using Uniswap, but some of those fees were ridiculous, right? So new users coming into the space, hey, they're only trading maybe $100, $200, but their fees are like $70. So this is not scalable. This is not something that can happen. Yes, Ethereum is trying to innovate from 1.0 to 2.0, but they're still kind of lagging behind because they're kind of the behemoth in the space, right? They have so many different things going on. And Richard Hart's like, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to build Pulse Chain. We're going to actually improve on the code. And the great thing is he's actually had a lot of backers, people that follow Ethereum very, very closely, people that know exactly how to program with Solidity. Personally, I am just someone who understands Solidity on the surface level. I focus much more of my time with investing in emerging markets. That's typically what I talk about on this channel. I'm currently here in Poland, and all these different things. I do love the blockchain space, but when it comes to actually hiring developers, I like the idea, and I think it's a great business lesson. Don't delegate what you don't know. So if you don't know how to build a website at all, don't delegate it to someone. At least try and learn it a little bit yourself, so okay, what's the basic time horizon of how they should get this done, and what's the basic cost structure, right? So if you're delegating out, building a decentralized application, and it could be done with, let's say, $10,000, but this person knows that you're clueless, they charge you 10x that amount, it's your fault, right? So this is the whole point of delegating, and you should at least know these things on a basic level if you want to be participating in the crypto space, so you can do audits like this, and then potentially, you can hire people to audit something like this. So essentially, this is kind of their test net that they rolled out there. You can actually run your own version of this if you're curious. You can see this is their ability to clone, and it's awesome because it's really letting the market decide, okay, what projects are good and what are not, right? This is awesome in my opinion. So you can see, again, if someone knows how to run a test, if someone knows how to do these things, you can see exactly what's going on here. They have all these things breaking down. I don't want to bore you too much with this, but you can see like the key features here. Essentially, they're working with this delegated proof of stake, where instead of having, with Bitcoin, for example, one of the biggest problems is this proof of work. And since Ethereum was built on that same model, the proof of work model, it's harmful for the environment, right? So that was kind of this market narrative, whether it's true or not, right? So I've talked about in the past, when you're just looking at it in a vacuum, yes, it's problematic. I agree. But you also have to look at, hey, people play video games every single day. Look at the petrodollar system. There's so many other things to compare it to when you contrast it. Not that bad relatively. But if we can get rid of this kind of a market narrative that is terrible for the environment and move to a proof of stake network, which is actually more secure in a lot of ways. If you're curious on that, that's for a whole nother video topic. But essentially, it allows for this possibility where you're less likely to get 51% attacked, to kind of take over the actual chain and change history, essentially. That's the whole thing. Again, maybe topic for another video. I would highly recommend following them here on Twitter at PulseChain.com. for all the updates, what's going on with this airdrop. If something changes along the way, if anything happens, that way you can see any updates. Also, I will be following along with this personally because I think it's probably one of the most interesting things going on in the blockchain space. Very, very interested in what Richard Heart has built with Hex. He was, just completely attacked relentlessly by people that really didn't know anything about Hex. They just had their blinders on. They were just saying scam, 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 scam. I talked about this in the previous video, but man, that Peter McCormick guy who's, I think he has a podcast, What Bitcoin Did, had this interview with Richard Heart, and it was pathetic. He literally could not debate at all. His debate, Richard Heart did a great job, in my opinion, but especially being so open-minded to Peter McCormick just going after him relentlessly, which obviously makes for interesting entertainment. But it's really pathetic when you're a journalist. And Peter McCormick calls himself a journalist, right? He has advertisers. He has all these different things and promotes, trading Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin, all these different things. It was honestly kind of sad to see. But again, Richard Heart has kind of blown through all this criticism. He's really built Hex to do incredible things. Now, obviously, it hasn't been around that long in the grand scheme of things. But I mean, the price chart pretty much says it all. Yes, obviously we'll have these pullbacks. I would be not surprised at all if we pulled back at least to these levels. We had that nice wick down. We're kind of bodying out here. This is on the daily time frame. We could see a retracement back down to these levels. That's not necessarily what I'm interested in here, right? So Hex is one individual aspect. The awesome thing about Hex is it will still be running on the Ethereum ecosystem, but you will also have a version on Pulse Chain. So I think this is absolutely awesome, again, what's going on here. And I'm very, very curious tracking this, what will happen. But as I was talking about here, when you look at the sacrifice phase, this video will be going out tomorrow. So it'll be, no, sorry. This video is posted today. My apologize. I'm recording so many videos and doing so many things in the market. Sometimes I lose track of these things. But you can see here, if you're kind of pushing this off and you're going like, hey, I don't know what to do, just remember each day that increases that 5%. Okay, so that's why it's pretty awesome. It has the game theory built in. They have a nice testimonial built up here with the Ascens Foundation working on medical research. I think they've gotten over like $25 million, which is amazing, amazing, amazing. Who else in the crypto space is doing things like this? Where essentially part of the sacrifice, you can decide to receive a little bit less Pulse tokens, so PLS tokens. The current plan is per 1 point. You have a Pulse token. So again, with this, you can see how that breakdown would happen. Okay, so as we were talking about, so we were on this article. This article is absolutely incredible. They basically talk about how this potentially could be a tax write-off. But yeah. I mean, this is also interesting. The other question that I had in the other videos, so all these forks of all these tokens on the Ethereum network, they're basically going to have all these different tokens that I know now they have Lumens, they have even things like Dogecoin. People are sacrificing these tokens to the Pulse Chain network. They're all starting out at zero, right? So this is a way to do it. They built this so potentially you don't have a taxable event when you receive something if it's $0 versus, if these just were mirrored on the Ethereum blockchain, which wouldn't really work out that well in the grand scheme of things. Again, probably a longer conversation, but basically starting them out at zero is much better because then you have price discovery, right? So once they kind of find their price range, where they're going to be trading in the Pulse Chain blockchain ecosystem, a lot of them might even actually exceed over time the cost on Ethereum, right? So let's just take Aave, for example. So Aave, people love it, especially since it's built with layer 2 on Polygon. You have this option to the market where you can get flash loans, all these kind of different things, earned yields. And one of the problems you see, especially if you're not dealing with high amounts, especially if people are just using like I said, relatively smaller amounts, is they run into fees on the network. So what Pulse Chain is all about is reducing the fees, increasing the scalability, working with this delegated proof of stake network where you can still earn this passive income by delegating it, right? So the Polkadot ecosystem has a similar type thing. I've recorded a video on how to stake Polkadot in the past. But the whole point here is just to kind of update you guys on what's going on here. Again, these things start out at zero. Then once price discovery happens, they're actually traded on the markets. Then they'll find their kind of trading range. But this is all an experiment, right? So that's what I find so fascinating. I think the most important thing in life is run experiments, right? So instead of just, you do the same thing every single day, you go to the same place to work every single day, run an experiment. Hey, so tell your boss, I'm going to take a week off. I'm sick for this week, or I'm going on vacation, whatever it is. Run an experiment. Try starting your own thing. Whether you only eat at the same place, you only date the same people, you only hang out with the same people. Run different experiments, test, iterate, and improve. This is something that works in real life, and it works in blockchain, right? It works here with the actual testnet here because, hey, they're running this as an experiment. They're laying it out there. If somebody finds a problem, they identify the problem, they fix it, right? So this is all part of iterating and improving. Again, not just in blockchain, but in life as well. So again, I don't really want to make a tutorial video on this because it's so basic. I don't even know why anyone would need a tutorial on this, but it's literally the easiest thing. If you know how to use MetaMask at all, if you know what you're doing at all, which I'm assuming if you've made it this far in the video, you probably have used MetaMask before. You probably know how to use a decentralized application. It's just running, you're running essentially what a Pulse will pop up as a different net, right? So you have all these different networks. I don't know if you guys can see this, but with MetaMask here, when you pull it up, you have these default networks. Then you can also add in networks like Binance Smart Chain, like Avalanche. But with this Pulse sacrifice, you can find the list of tokens that you can sacrifice. Typically, they're ERC20s, but also they've added things like Avalanche and Lumens and different things like that. You connect the wallet. Literally, the simplest thing you can possibly do. And sacrifice it. That's basically what's going on. And remember what's going on with the sacrifice based on the dollar amount, which a lot of people have been sacrificing the Hex token because, again, it's not necessarily where the token's at when you sacrifice it at it, but at the very end, if the token goes up in value or down in value, it's relative to that based on the sacrifice points. So lastly here, I did want to kind of update you guys. This is crazy. So $475 million locked in, blowing my mind. I think this is absolutely insane, especially if they can get to $1 billion on this raise. It'll be fascinating. I need to do another video kind of updating people on Hex because it's really sad and kind of pathetic that CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap don't have them listed where they actually should be. CoinMarketCap has Hex listed at like, I think maybe 0.200 or 0.300, and the market cap should put them at like number 4, number 3. It's really insane in my opinion, and the market cap is not something that's that hard to calculate. You literally go, okay, what's the last traded price? What's the circulating supply? Very, very simple formula. You can see the actual volume in all these that have been sacrificed, the value in ETH, the value in Hex, USD, DAI, Tether, SwapDex, Uniswap token, Matic, so the actual Polygon, Ren, BTC, Chainlink, Aave. Remember, guys, all these other ones, these when they're the actual Pulse trading pair will start at 0, right? So keep that in mind. And it'll kind of build a curl. But that's a good thing in my opinion. These things can't really go negative. They will find their trading range, and again, some of them potentially will get a lot higher because people will probably use them a little bit more potentially on Pulse Chain versus Polygon or Ethereum. So that's basically all for today's video. If you want to see a part 3 or another update as this sacrifice phase goes along, let me know in the comments. That's basically all for this one. If you have any questions, let me know down there. If I mess anything up, let me know down there. You can also join our Telegram group, link down below in the description. Follow us on Twitter at InvestGlobal_IO. Follow PulseChain at PulseChain.com. That's all for this one. Again, like, subscribe, whatnot, Invest Global, and until next time.